Om Shanti. A very good morning to everyone. I heartily welcome you to today's webinar, Spiritual Intelligence. On behalf of Brahma Kumaris IT Wing, I, Kriti Verma, volunteer from IT Wing, heartily invite you to Spiritual Intelligence. The session is filled with deep knowledge and enlightening concepts. I hope it will enable us all to better understand the mechanics to function properly in such critical times. Brahma Kumaris is an international NGO, largest spiritual institute administered by women, with its presence in more than 140 countries, is dedicatedly working towards personal development and world renewal. Brahma Kumaris is active within various chapters of the society through 20 wings. One of the wings is IT Wing, which is working towards catering IT professionals across the globe. IT Wing constitutes of IT professionals who are active practitioners of applied spiritual concepts and meditation while living in a work-family structure. So far, through the conferences and retreats conducted by IT Wing, more than 40,000 IT professionals benefited over the last 6 years. Employees from 100 plus IT organizations such as Google, Microsoft, TCS, IBM, Infosys, Wipro, and many more participated in these retreats. Now, as you all know, we have Mr. Yogesh Sharda as our guest speaker for today. Let me take the opportunity to introduce him with all of you. I heartily welcome Mr. Yogesh Sharda. Mr. Sharda has been working as a personal development trainer and workshop facilitator for over 20 years, presenting many hundreds of seminars, workshops, and courses for businesses, hospitals, universities, youth organizations, and local community groups through Europe, UK, the Middle East, Southeast Asia, Australasia, USA, Central and South America, the Caribbean, and India. Born in Malawi, Africa, with an Indian background and brought up in London and Oxford, bringing up the diversity and understanding of many cultures, he was able to connect with millions of individuals and help them in exploring their inner world. His training comes from the Academy for a Better World, situated in Mount Abu, Rajasthan, India, and the Global Retreat Center in Oxford, England, both run by the Brahma Kumaris University. He has presented series of talks on topics such as the art of relaxation and meditation, the principles of inner leadership, the secrets of self-esteem, appreciative inquiry, etc. Through his course of 20 years, he has conducted various seminars and trainings with the renowned institutions like Microsoft, Siemens, IBM, Adidas, British American Tobacco, Philip Morris, Next, Bank of America, BITS Pilani College, and many more. So let us all join together in welcoming Mr. Sharda, and let us begin with today's session. Om Shanti.
Hello and welcome everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, yes.
Yes,
Okay.
Bhaiji.
So firstly, a big thanks to my colleagues, my sisters and brothers in the IT wing who have organized and invited me to be with you here today. What I'm going to share today will be a combination of what I've learned from my own personal experience of my spiritual journey, which started when I was quite young, and it's been around 40 years or so. But then also some things that I've picked up and learned from some amazing people, some great teachers and friends along the way. And I'm hoping that what is shared today will be practical for you and you can use it in your life straight away. Now, one of the things that we are seeing happening today in this time of lockdown, and it's a global scenario with people I talk to in different parts of the world, is that quite apart from dealing with the physical health issues, which is one whole subject in itself, but then the other related subject is how to handle our mental and psychological issues. And in fact, just yesterday I was listening to an interview where a psychologist was expecting, and the term he used was a tsunami of mental health issues as a result of what we're passing through. And one of the reasons for this is because people's patterns of living, people's routines have been disrupted. And so they're not able to go to the places they are used to, or visit their usual hangouts, or indeed meet the people who are their favorite people. And due to this disruption in patterns, attitudes, and routines, it also creates some pressure and stress in a person's mind. And what I find is that most people have, well, everyone has two lives. On the one hand, there is our outer life of our career, study, travel, family, and so on. But then also there is the inner life, and that's the life of our thoughts, our emotions, our beliefs, etc. And I find that people have mostly been giving the majority of their attention to their outer life and relatively less to the inner life. And due to that, they haven't learned the skills of managing the mind and the emotions. And those people I find are having quite a hard time these days because there's no longer an escape route when your emotions are not the way you want them to be. But those people who have built into their lives self-management skills, mind management skills, emotional management skills, they're better able to get through these challenging times. And what I'm hoping for us in this session is that to share some ideas, some tips and skills, some tools which you could apply in your practical life. So our topic for today is spiritual intelligence. But also I note in the little blurb in the text on the poster, it also talks about handling your emotions. So I'll also talk a little bit about emotional intelligence as well, as I think that really is also the need of the hour. So what do we mean by these words? What is intelligence? Well, it's one of those words which has taken on many different meanings, of course, like several words have. Each country has an intelligence agency, for example. But that's not really what intelligence is about. That's more about gathering information. But intelligence is more about how to appropriately and correctly apply intelligence in the right situation so there is benefit for all. And so let's look at four main types of intelligence to create context, and then we'll be more specific. So I have with me a few diagrams to help me to explain some of these ideas. So here are the four main types of intelligence, and I believe you can see these. Is that clear?
Yes, it is.
All right. So the most common one here shown is, of course, IQ, and it's the one that people have been talking about for the most of the time. And it was a way to measure how well a person would do in academic life, in career, and so on. And if somebody scored high on an IQ test, we would say, well, she or he is very intelligent. But this is no longer enough for successful living today. There are many more challenges which have entered daily life. And to deal with those challenges, we require other forms of intelligence. The next one up here is here shown as IC, which, as you can understand, stands for a person's intuitive capacity. And so that's really a person's ability to listen and to tap into their own inner wisdom. Now, every person, every spirit possesses something called inner wisdom. And that wisdom is trying to guide you in your daily decision making. Not just the big decisions of life, but in everyday life. How to handle a person, how to deal with challenging situations. What should I do when suddenly I'm forced to make some kind of decision? Our inner wisdom is trying to talk to us. Our inner voice is trying to guide us. But for most people, they are unable to hear it. And the reason for that is because the mind is too chatty, talking, talking, talking all the time. And so it's like trying to listen to a voice in the storm. You know something is there, but you can't quite understand what it is. And sometimes you may hear 10 or 20% of the voice, and therefore of the message, and then make up the rest with your own ideas and desires. And this is where I find something like meditation is extremely useful, because it makes the mind quiet. And when the mind is quiet, then you're able to listen to your own inner voice. I'm sure you've all experienced a time when you really feel peaceful. The mind feels very peaceful. You feel very clear-headed, and you know exactly what you have to do. And I believe that before problem solving, first we have to have self-solving. If I solve my mind, if I make my mind peaceful and calm, I'm able to see a solution to any problem in life, whether it's at work or at home. When the mind is rushing, then we cannot see a solution, even if the solution is standing right in front of me. You know, you may have experienced in your life, for example, you need to go out rather quickly and you're looking for the car keys, but you can't find them anywhere. You turn the house upside down looking for those keys. You blame everyone in the house for misplacing your keys. And you sit down and you wonder, what am I going to do now? And somebody comes into the room, points to some keys on the table and says, "Excuse me, are these the keys you're looking for?" I think, how could I not see this? These are my keys. In fact, you did see them. Your eyes did fall upon the keys, but because the mind was rushing, it could not register, these are your keys and you have to take them. So the eyes receive visual information, but it's the mind that sees. It's the ears which receive audio information, but it's the mind that listens. So let's do this. Before we go further, let's just spend a few moments in experiencing how fairly easy it is to relax your body, to relax your mind, and then how that inner wisdom begins to become clearer to you. So what I'd suggest is let's do this little exercise, which takes about 3 minutes, and it's called a creative visualization. And I will just speak a few words to guide you on a little journey, and just follow as best as you can. Okay, so what I'd suggest is if you're on a chair, try and have your back straight, have your feet flat on the floor. It's important to be comfortable, but also to be alert at the same time. Okay, now some people like to close their eyes. You can do that, but then of course one needs to pay attention not to feel drowsy. Or you can just have your eyes half open if you prefer that. So let's start with this simple exercise called the quiet room of peace. And we spend a few moments just to relax the body and also to relax the mind. And so firstly, just bring your attention in towards yourself. And now bring your attention up to your face. And now bring your attention to the center of the forehead. And here at the center of your forehead, picture a small room. This small room is your quiet room of peace. Just to visualize this very pleasant, quiet room of peace in the center of your forehead. This is your private and personal space. When you are inside your quiet room, you feel very relaxed. Inside the quiet room, you are safe, secure. You are free from the pressures and the demands of the outside world. Inside your quiet room, you can let go of your daily roles and responsibilities. Feel the peace and the wonderful silence of your very own quiet room. Just allow your mind to absorb this atmosphere of serenity, tranquility. And as you do so, the thoughts begin to slow down. The mind becomes calm, quiet, relaxed, peaceful, and free. Just be with this feeling of peace in your mind for 1 minute. Okay, so hoping you feel a bit more relaxed. And if you found this useful, then I would say, try to do it every day if you can, at least once or twice a day. And the mind deserves this. The mind needs this. Just as we give a lot of attention to our body, and mostly the body needs oxygen, it needs water, of course it needs rest. And as we've understood the body, we've learned how to take better care of it. Nowadays, of course, people are so health conscious and food conscious, and they've become aware of different allergies, and so they avoid certain foods. The same kind of attention must be given to the mind. How to keep the mind stable, peaceful, strong. There is a whole science connected to this, and it's time to explore that in our lives. So let's continue with our list of intelligences. So the next one up, emotional intelligence, and again, it's a very popular thing nowadays. And that's really about how well you can understand and manage your own emotions, and how well you can pick up how other people are feeling. So if you can do the first, then you can do the second thing. If you can manage your own mind and emotions, then you're in a position to be able to pick up how others are feeling. So let's look at that for a moment. How well can I manage my own emotions? Let's say, for example, you are in a bad mood. Let's say you are down in the dumps. And the question arises, how long does your bad mood last? Is it a few minutes, a couple of hours, a day or two, maybe a week? Now, we all sometimes get a little bit flustered, a bit annoyed or irritated. But what's important is how quickly I can lift myself up out of that. That's a way of measuring how much my emotions are actually in my control. Because when one is in a bad mood, it's like there's a sign here saying, don't talk to me today. I'm not in the mood. And of course, in a work setting, when one is in a bad mood, then it's difficult for others to communicate with you, to get ideas from you. And so people have to wait until you recover from that mood in order to be able to be productive and useful. Think, for example, of how we react to criticism, to failure, or to aspects of fear. How much am I able to control my emotions? And what this tells us is that between me and life, there is my mind. And usually the approach that most people have is, if I can control life, which means especially control other people, I'll feel secure, I'll be happy, I'll be peaceful. But you cannot control life. Between you and life, there is something called the mind. If my mind is in my control, then life is less able to stress me. So shifting from the paradigm of trying to control life to instead bringing my mind under my control, that is a big part of what emotional intelligence is about. But it's also a big challenge, because we have the habit of trying to control other people. That's how we grow up, that's what we've seen in the movies, that's what we read in the newspapers, where people have this tendency of pointing a finger. When she or he behaves differently, then I'll be more happy. But when we live with that culture of blame, when we play the blame game, then there are no winners, all are losers. And to be self-aware or to be spiritually aware means to take this basic lesson on board. And that is that I cannot control situations, people, and events, whether it's something in the world news or it's something in front of me in my house. But the only thing I can control is how I choose to respond to that. And so shifting my desire for control from the outside to my response to the outside, when I really understand that, that's a game changer in terms of how you feel about life. And it's something you can try straight away. In your relationships, next time you feel irritated due to someone, whether it's at home or it's at work, just remind yourself, okay, I can't control how this person speaks, but I can control how I wish to respond to this person. And this is all about me talking to my own mind. Why? Because the mind is like a child. Now, children can be very sweet, very cute, very lovely, but also a child doesn't know how to wait, wants everything now. A child takes things out of proportion. A child can get upset easily. A child needs a lot of attention. And this is why the mind has been described as a child. The other part of our consciousness is something called our intellect. And this is the relationship between the two. The mind is the child, the intellect is the parent. So when the mind feels upset or angry or fearful or creating scenarios, worst case scenarios, it's very tiring because the mind just goes on and on and on. Sometimes doesn't let go of something of the past or keeps worrying about something in the future. So there we have to use our intellect to talk to the mind. Okay, mind, it's not so bad. Keep your patience. We'll find a solution. Keep positive. That self-talk, positive self-talk is very necessary in order to train the mind not to overthink. And this I call as the worst habit of the human race, the habit of overthinking. Why? Because when one overthinks, we are literally wasting the precious, precious fuel of thought power. When we waste our thought power, the mind gets tired. When the mind is tired, patience level goes down, tolerance level goes down, we misunderstand situations, we misunderstand people, and life gets very complicated. So intelligence in terms of dealing with emotions is about learning to take care of my thought energy. That's where it starts. In fact, the one conclusion I came to was that your whole life is a reflection of how you are choosing to spend your thought energy. If you really reflect on that, I think you'll find it's absolutely true. And it's good news for us because it means when I choose to use my thought energy better, when I upgrade the way I'm using my thought energy, everything in my life will also upgrade. My relationship with myself, my personal happiness, my ability to maintain peace of mind, my relationships with others will be more stable, my performance at work will improve. It all starts with thoughts because life is ultimately a game of thoughts. And meditation, building meditation into our daily life is a big, big part of knowing how to look after my thought energy. Okay, so these were the three, and then we come to the fourth one, which is sometimes called a combination of the other three. And as you can see, that's SQ, which is our title for today, spiritual intelligence. Usually at this point, I ask the audience, is this making sense to you? Is it okay? But of course, I'm just looking at your names on the screen. Request if you could speak slightly louder. Okay, let me come a bit closer. Can you hear me now? I hope that's okay.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Thank you for the pointer, by the way. Yeah. So in one way, you could say spiritual intelligence it's about learning how to look after the spirit. But let's look at something in more detail. Spiritual intelligence is connected with two main things, in my view. One is to be clear about your sense of identity. The other is to be clear about your sense of purpose. In other words, who am I and why am I doing whatever I am doing? So how clear are my answers to these two questions, identity and purpose? And I have found that people who have a high SQ, high spiritual intelligence, I notice two signs in such people. One is such a person will own their motivation. Their motivation will belong to them. Now, motivation also has two types. One is what we call as emotional motivation, and that's where you get motivated, excited, enthusiastic very quickly, but for a short time. For example, at work, somebody offers you more money, or offers you a company car, or offers you your own office. And you get very motivated with this offer, but it lasts for a while. It's like soda water, then afterwards, the motivation finishes. But the other kind of motivation, which we call as inner motivation or spiritual motivation, that's the motivation which belongs to you. It's not coming from the outside, but it's a result of having done this inner work of exploring these two things, identity and purpose. And that motivation is not just for your work, but it's for everything throughout your life. Your work, your home life, your social life, your study, whatever you do. It's what we call as the red thread which runs through your life. So this is the first sign, to own your motivation. And the second sign I have seen in people with high SQ is they have a very deep-seated sense of contentment. They don't lose their contentment even if they fail at something, even if they pass through adversity, even if they are being criticized. Their contentment is very deep inside them. In other words, their happiness is a feeling, not just an emotion. It's something that's coming from deep inside the core of the person. And that person has learned not just how to experience that deep level of happiness, but owns it and moves with it, carries it in their day-to-day life. And I think it's becoming more and more obvious today that the need of time is for humans to explore who they are. Who am I? What does it mean to be a person? So here are some ideas to explore identity and also purpose. So how do we identify ourselves? And the answer that you are giving to this question, who am I? That answer is the basis of how you are living your life. You may have heard this very, very beautifully said term that you don't see the world as it is, you see the world as you are. According to who you think you are, that's how you will see the world. And that means success, failure, praise, criticism, being the center of attention or being completely ignored. The way you see it, the way you feel about it, the way you respond to it, all depends on who you think you are. Let's explore a bit further. So here are three levels of experience that we find ourselves in. Three concentric circles. So there is the being part, there's the doing part, and then there is the having part. And most people spend most of their lives within the doing and the having realms. And what this means is that most of their thought energy, most of their ideas, most of their attention is spent throughout the day with what I have to do and what I have, the things I do and the things I have. So what do I have to do? It's my job, my responsibilities, my roles, my relationships. So thinking about these things for the whole day, being engrossed in all of these things. So it's like a person is living in the doing realm for the whole day. Or in the having realm. What do I have which is influencing my thinking? Well, I have a nationality, I may have a religion, I may have a family, I may have a culture, I may have likes and dislikes, hobbies, etc. So the thought energy is almost like locked into the doing and the having realm. And the result of this is the being part, which is actually the foundation of ourselves. That being part is not given proper attention. And therefore, it becomes rather weak. In other words, the spirit part becomes weak. Now, it's just like any building you may construct. Before you go up, first you have to go down and fix firm foundations. If the foundation is firm, the building can withstand little earthquakes or some storms. If the foundation is weak, no matter how tall or how beautiful the building is, a little shake of the earth and the building comes crashing down. So too it is with the building of my peace, the building of my happiness, the building of my contentment. If I've done that inner work of feeding the being part, understanding the being part, nourishing the being part, then when there are challenges in life, for example, what we're passing through now with Corona and its related issues, or job problems, or money problems, or relationship problems, if the being part is properly nourished, the building of my happiness will remain steady even when there are challenges in life. And what I further said here is that when I identify with the doing part of my life and the having part, that is what is called as the ego. And when we're living within the ego system, then ultimately our emotions go out of control. So how to deal with these ego-based emotions? Well, we have to understand what is the being part. So now here comes the next diagram. This is really about what is a human being. So I'll try to simplify these diagrams. I'm hoping they're useful for you. All right, is that in focus there? So we have this pyramid. And so as you can see, the top of the pyramid is the physical part. So the most obvious part of a person is the physical, the outer appearance. And the outer appearance just tells you a little bit about the person. As you go a little bit further down, and you find the next part is the social self, the physical self, and then the social self. And so social self is about how a person's characteristics manifest in the behavior, how the personality is revealed in the mannerisms, the code of conduct, and so on. Rather like a mirror will reflect your physical appearance, so your behavior reflects your character. So social self is revealing the character in practical life, in practical actions. And these two together is about as much as you really get to know about most other people. And these two together make up only about 10% of the person. The rest of the person is hidden below the surface. So maybe for some people you know 15 or 20% of the person, but the majority of people in your life, you know only 10% of that person. And sometimes there is a case where people have known each other for decades. Even they've been married for decades. And suddenly one says or does or takes some decision which shocks the other. And one thinks, but how could you do this? How could you say this? I thought I knew you. Well, in fact, you didn't know. You knew only 10%. And so I would say that if you think you know someone really well, then think again or be ready for a little surprise one day. And it's not only about knowing others, but also knowing the self. How much do I know myself? I would say again, maybe 10, 20, maybe 30%. But there are other forces down here in the subconscious which are driving us that we may not even be aware of. And so let's go down here. Because when people want to make some improvements in their lives, they tend to just work on these levels. Either they change something physically, they change their way they look, their clothes or their hair or something, or they change something in their social life. They try to get new friends or they hang out in different places. But these are really just cosmetic changes which make you feel a little better. If I really want improvement in my life, and again, I think that's the message, one of the messages of COVID, if I want to improve my life, I need to go down here and see what's going on here and make improvements. The emotional part, we've discussed already a little bit to do with your moods. But then the most important part of the pyramid is the spiritual self. And that is the basis of the pyramid. The spiritual self influences every other part of your life. And the spiritual self is, again, these two things, identity and purpose. Let's just look at identity in a little more detail, because for me, that's really the beginning of any kind of improvement in any field, whether it's your personal life or even we're looking at the global situation. Exploring the question, who am I? Or collectively, who are we? That's the beginning of the solution to anything. So let's look at the next model to see how identity works, how identity is formed. So here's the stick person. And there's quite a bit of information here. I'm not sure if you can see all this clearly. But I've tried to put some of the main labels that we give to each other and we acquire from others as well as we go through life. So when a person is born, there is the race, the nationality, the religion label comes along, the job label, the family role, the social status, etc. And so we acquire these labels as we move through life. Somebody puts you in this box. You are of this race, of this country, or you're of this profession, you're from this caste or this tribe or this creed and so on. And on one level, we may say, yeah, okay, so what's wrong with that? Well, there are three stages that this labeling passes through. The first stage is where you acquire these labels. So somebody says, okay, this is your job, this is your family, this is your race, your ethnic group, simply acquiring a label. And at the stage of acquiring the label, there's no problem. It's rather like just having some coordinates in life, some coordinates in the world. But what happens after a while is we slip into stage number 2. That is called we begin to identify with that label. This is where all the problems start. We begin to identify. In other words, we take that label which is outside of me and we begin to put it into our consciousness. For example, when you go first to work, and let's say you're working as a bank supervisor or maybe a bank manager, you may even say, I work as such and such. I work as a bank supervisor. So here is me, and here is my job. But after some time, we begin to say, I am this. I am the bank manager. I am the bank supervisor. So I've begun to take that label and I'm placing it into my consciousness. And at that moment, as I place something from the outside into my consciousness, I have stepped away from my true identity. And this is going to affect my emotions. As we looked at earlier, the spiritual self influences the emotional self. The emotions, they're coming from what I identify with. So if I've identified very strongly with my job and I've been doing that 30 years, and it's really, I've put it deep into my consciousness, one day when I lose that job, how would I feel? If that job is taken away from me, I would feel lost. I would feel a part of me has been taken away. Why? Because I made the mistake of identifying with it too strongly. It's important to know I do a job, but I am not my job. There's a difference between the being and the doing. If I maintain this awareness even at work, this is one aspect of spiritual intelligence. This is an aspect of taking care of the spirit, even whilst being busy in my day-to-day life. When we allow the doing and the having to infiltrate the being part, the spirit part, gets polluted. And that's what this diagram here is showing us. That when we place all of these labels into our consciousness, that is called as spiritual pollution. The sign of that spiritual pollution is negative emotions emerge, such as anger, such as revenge, such as jealousy, such as backbiting, such as dislike, and further depression and loneliness and fear and anxiety. All of these are ego-based emotions. Another thing that people identify very strongly with, one is their job, but the other also is their nationality. Think about this. Do you have a nationality, or are you a nationality? You have a passport, and in your passport there is a nationality. But are you a passport? No. But today we have placed the passport into our consciousness. It's like I have become a passport. Hello, I'm a passport. When I see another person, I want to know, which passport are you? And this is such a huge illusion. I have a nationality, I have a race, I have a job, I have XYZ, but who I am is much, much more than that. And that's what we're going to come to. Stage 3 of this malaise, we said to acquire, then to identify. Stage 3 is to develop an attachment to. And when the mind has become attached to something, it does not even realize that it is in a dynamic of dependency. And one of the things I have learned is that wherever there is any kind of sorrow or suffering, at the roots of any kind of suffering, one will find some mental attachment. And so what to do? How to become free from all this? What does spiritual intelligence say about looking after the spirit? How to separate the being part from the doing part and from the having part? So now I'm just going to come to the last little diagram here. I think I have just a few minutes remaining. And so here is the simple truth. Truth always is simple, and I believe that to apply truth in every person's life should be simple. So I believe that this is how we describe the true self. You may call it the inner being, you may call it the consciousness, you may call it the life force, or you may simply use the word soul or Atma. And so here is the first step of spiritual intelligence, or the first step of self-realization, and that is that I am the spirit. I am a soul. It's not that I have a soul. It's not that I am this body and inside me there is something called a soul. No, it's the complete opposite. I am the spirit. I am the soul. I express myself through this body, this vehicle, this costume. And I also know one day there will come a time when I, the soul, I will leave this particular body costume and I continue on my own journey. It's not enough to know this. It's not enough to accept this. It's not enough to believe this. But what is important is to live this, practice this. And that's called living in soul consciousness. And this, I think, is what makes all the difference in a person's life. We are so stuck in living in these little labels, these little cubby holes, that it's drained the energy of the spirit. But to regain our inner power and to be spiritually intelligent means to live in the awareness that I am the spirit, I am a soul. And as has been shown here, it's another whole subject to go into. The soul resides in the center of the forehead. The soul is eternal. I, the soul, am eternal. I, the soul, my nature is peace. My nature is love. My nature is joy. Now, these three things come together. That's what constitutes inner strength or inner power. The person who is internally strong, in their relationships, they have much more to offer and to share, and their level of neediness is less. And so what finds is if you practice to be soul conscious in your day-to-day life, your capacity to share becomes greater. To share love, to share forgiveness, to share patience, to be understanding. Why? Because your need for security is coming from inside you rather than having to take it from the outside. And so I find that working on soul consciousness and spiritual intelligence means actually I'm healing and empowering my relationship with myself. The more happy I am with myself, the more I can take care of my peace of mind, the more useful I will be also to all the people at home and at work. Okay, so I'm coming to closing this part of the program. I'm hoping some of these things were useful for you. And let me just check in with Krati then. See how are we doing, and any comments from you, any instructions?
Thank you very much, Yogesh Bhai. It was an enlightening session. I hope everybody enjoyed it. We are yet to receive comments and feedback from our audience. Now, before we move ahead with our next part of the session, that is Q&A, question and answer session. Meanwhile, all the participants send their questions to BK Krati. I would like to take a couple of minutes to make few announcements just before we go to question and answer. So the couple of announcements include, first, we are going to run a second batch of Applied Raj Yoga meditation session. It's going to be a 9-day session starting from 30th of May to 7th of June from 7 a.m. It will be a webcast that is retelecast of Balabhai's session along with live question and answer segment. Registrations are now open. In case if you want to register for it, you can visit bkitwing.org/applied-raj yoga. Just to give a brief introduction, we had 300 more participants in the first batch, and till now 100 of them are continuing with the sustenance. In case if you want to visit our previous webinars of IT Wing, you can go and visit it at bkitwing.org/webinar. We have about 5-6 webinar recordings there. In case if you want to know more about the events of BKIT Wing, you can go check out bkitwing.org/events. Now, I would request you all to please spare few moments after this webinar to give us your kind feedback so that we can transform and better suit our audience. So please leave your feedback at bkitwing.org/feedback. You'll find a Google form there where you can provide us your feedback. Now, in case if you are interested in going ahead with a few other commentaries of meditation or the vast collection of our meditation music, there are a few apps available on Play Store. One of them is Just a Minute. You can just type Just a Minute in Play Store and you will be able to find this app. And there's another one is B-Zone app. It has daily challenges, virtue scope, and many more activities which can be done by you. It's a basic interactive app. So please have a look and explore. And in case if you have any questions, you can always email us at sit@bkitwing.org. Now, let us go ahead with the question and answer session, Yogesh Bhai. If you want to send your questions, you can send to BK Krati, and here are a few instructions. You will see a more option in the mobile segment, and you click there and you'll find chat option, and then you can send it to BK Krati. So Yogesh Bhai, I have started getting few questions.
Okay.
So there is one question from a YouTube viewer, and the question is, how should we increase our intuitive capacity? Is there a way we can work through it?
Yeah. Well, one thing is, to build into your life moments of silence, as we did, with a little meditation. If it's new for you, learning meditation, especially starting in the morning, because in the morning time, at least for the first, I would say, first half an hour or so, it's within that first half an hour, try to do your meditation before the conscious mind kicks in. Once the conscious mind starts, then a lot of noise will start. So the morning time, visit the peace inside you, visit the quietness inside you. And that's like encouraging the inner wisdom to emerge. Then during the day, building a practice which we call as traffic control for the mind into your daily life. So that's like this, that imagine the thoughts in your mind are like the cars in the road. And the question arises, how is the traffic up here? How is the traffic in your mind? Is it flowing orderly? Is it coordinated? Is it organized? Or are my thoughts going in all different directions at the same time? We know that when there's a traffic jam, a lot of time and energy is wasted. And one thought, one car in the wrong place can block 100 other cars. In the same way, one weak thought, one waste thought, one negative thought can block the flow of my happiness and my peace. So traffic control is like for 3 minutes, you try and stop once mid-morning, let's say 10:30, once mid-afternoon, maybe 2:30. You just go from doing to being. Go to that quiet, still place inside you. Go to that quiet room. And as you learn to do this, you are breaking the mind's habit of speeding. The mind will begin to become more calm. And then through the day, you'll feel your inner voice becoming louder and louder. Your inner wisdom is more present for you. So then it's a question of practice. And if it's new for you, I would suggest do it every day for 1 week and see how you feel at the end of that week. And I pretty much guarantee you feel a lot more calm and you feel your inner wisdom is guiding you in your daily decision making.
Thank you, Yogesh Bhai. Can we use the similar tactic to also detach from our beliefs, which we always carry about ourselves? How
So
do we detach? How do we detach from the beliefs we carry about ourselves? Can we use similar pattern or?
yeah, it's a great question actually, because first thing is to recognize the beliefs I'm carrying. Some of those beliefs may be conscious, but many may be subconscious, and they may be very wrong beliefs. So yeah, certainly silence time enables me to look inside myself and recognize which beliefs are driving me. And this is why sometimes we say that people who meditate, they open their third eye, because these two eyes are for looking outward. The third eye is for looking inside and understanding my own inner world. And so definitely the more the mind becomes quiet, the more I'm able to see those beliefs. And in addition to having those beliefs, we also have some deep attachments to some of those beliefs. Now, the question arises, why do those beliefs arise in the first place? And why do we become attached to them? It's because of the need to feel secure. Whenever you feel insecure, even physically, you grab something to feel secure, to feel steady. And that's what the mind has been doing for a long time, grabbing hold of beliefs to give me a sense of stability and security in life. But when we start working on our spiritual part, then the need for security comes from very deep inside you. It's coming from the truth inside you. And when your need for security is coming from there, naturally, the mind will begin to let go of the beliefs, and you really feel you become free.
I hope it helped them. It was a beautiful explanation, Yogesh Bhai. Bhaiji, there are a few questions related to realizing, making other person realize that they are carrying a very strong sense of egoistic nature, or they have a huge negative aura or negativity with them. How can we make the other person realize, or is there a way we can change them as well?
Well, that's what
What can
everyone's
be
trying
done?
to do. I would be a little bit careful about trying to make somebody realize something or trying to change someone. Um, the only thing one can do, in my view, is to be an example. The moment one tries to tell others, usually people's ego will react and they'll say, well, that's your belief, or they start pointing things out to us. It's important to understand this thing about ego. When a person has a lot of ego, it's because there is a little child inside who is saying, I need some love, I need some attention, I need some respect. The person who has a big ego is actually spiritually very weak. And so what I have found with some great, great yogis and teachers I've known over the years is they realize a person who has ego needs to be given a lot of genuine love. What happens there is that if you are able to be balanced in self-respect and humility, you will naturally give positivity, kindness, a lot of love to the egotistical person. This will cause that person to be disarmed. They will begin to drop their ego because in your company, they begin to feel good. They begin to feel secure. So ego, which is being used as a weapon or sometimes as a defense, is no longer needed because I am giving that person the love and respect, which is what they're really looking for. And gradually, as they begin to come in your company and observe you, they will also learn how to drop those ego masks. I'll just add one more sentence here, which I love very much, and that is that spirituality cannot be taught. It can only be caught, which means that I just have to be the example and others will catch it through example and behavior. And ultimately, actions do speak louder than words.
Thank you, Bhaiji. I'll remember that phrase. It's beautiful. So, Bhaiji, we have one more question, which says that what should I be thinking about while focusing or while meditating? Because the mind keeps on roaming here and there. And how do we realize that we have entered the state of meditation?
Yeah,
What
definitely.
guides?
If you're new to meditation, the mind needs to be directed. It's not about a question of suppressing the thoughts or rejecting the thoughts. It's like the mind, like a horse. It has this habit of wandering around. If I don't direct it, it'll just keep wandering. Therefore, in our practice, which I've been doing, as I say, most of my life, which is called Raja Yoga meditation, we study spiritual knowledge and we meditate on the basis of that. And so the very basic aspects of spiritual knowledge, I am the soul, I am light, I am peace, I am eternal, I am an energy. And so by bringing these thoughts into the mind and also visualizing that point of light in the forehead at the same time, these two things, contemplation and visualization together, they create this state known as concentration. Where there's concentration, then one moves into experience. That's called meditation. In fact, I have another little diagram, which is not for today, but I have it anyway. I'll just show it to you. This is really how meditation works in my experience. So contemplation is where I am bringing thoughts of spiritual understanding into my mind, like I am a soul, I'm light, I'm eternal, I'm energy, and visualization as well. I visualize that star of light in the forehead. These two together, they create concentration. It takes practice to get that. Concentration leads to experience. That is called meditation. So meditation is not thinking, and meditation is not thinking. Meditation is the experience of thought. So how do you know you're meditating? At that time, you won't know, you won't think, I am meditating, but you'll be lost in the experience of peace. Your mind will feel very silent. It's rather like when you are drinking a glass of water. At that time, because your mouth is full, you cannot speak. So too, when the mind is really drinking the experience of peace, the experience of silence, it's so beautiful, so rich. The mind is not producing other thoughts at that time. You are lost in that thought. And the sign of that is after you've finished your session of meditation, for quite some time, you don't even feel like speaking. Or if you do speak words, it's like they are coming from this silence inside you. You feel that peace, and others who hear you will also feel that vibration of peace in your voice. Of course, then as we get busy in daily life, we tend to forget. And that's why meditation has to be regular, again and again, recharge the soul battery with a meditation experience.
Thank you, Yogesh Bhai. Practice matters. So there's another question, Yogesh Bhai. Is God prayer sadhana similar to meditation? And if I'm doing God prayer or sadhana every day, am I required to do meditation every day as well?
God prayer, did you say?
Yeah, praying to God. Yeah.
To God. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, for us, there's two words. There's meditation, and there is something else called yoga. So meditation is kind of like a preliminary step where I'm experiencing the truth about myself. I am a soul, I am light, I'm energy. That's the first step. And sometimes we call that as the journey inward. Then the second step is the journey upward. The journey upward, which is where I'm creating a connection between I, the soul, and God, the supreme soul. And as you would know, yoga means union or coming together of two things. The highest form of yoga is the soul and supreme soul connection in thought. And so for us, when we're experiencing that yoga connection with God, then it's the highest of all human experiences. And I would say it is something even beyond prayer. I'm literally experiencing God's love flowing into me, God's peace, God's power. And it's like you build a living relationship with God in your life, and that yoga becomes part of your daily experience. And sometimes we say, it's like there are people who meditate and there are meditators. So people who meditate, they practice meditation, they sit down for half an hour, 20 minutes. That can be fine for a person. But to be a meditator means as you go through the day, you have a very natural attention on your thoughts and your consciousness. To be soul conscious and to keep your mind connection with God through the day, and hence it becomes a lifestyle.
Okay. Yogesh Bhai, there is another question related to how to identify our purpose that you just mentioned in this session. How can
Yeah,
we identify our purpose?
yeah, another great question. I looked only at the identity part. I didn't go into the purpose part. That's another huge subject. Well, for me, it's like this. The way to discover your purpose is really to ask yourself some deep questions in introspection, and then just to be open for the answers. Maybe I start with one or two little examples here to show how it might work. Everything has its own purpose. And purpose is always connected with how something is useful or how something can be of service. So, for example, we have this marker here. I can ask, what's the purpose of this? Well, you can say the purpose of it is to write. Okay, fine. There is a clock here. What's the purpose of the clock? It's so that we can see the time. Okay, that's fine. There are some headphones here. What's the purpose of the headphones? It's so I can listen more closely. I can speak more with the microphone. In other words, everything has its own unique sense of usefulness. The sun has a purpose. The trees have a purpose. The wind has a purpose. The sea has a purpose. The purpose is about how something is useful, and everything has its own unique sense of usefulness. Then the question arises, if everything has its own unique sense of usefulness, then what am I useful for? Okay. So the journey begins to undiscover my purpose. Now, how to find that? Look over your own life up to now and find times in your life when you felt really passionate about something, very motivated about something, when you felt very driven. That's indicating where your purpose is in your life. Purpose is always something you will enjoy, and you will have some ability in doing that. When you're really living on purpose, you feel very focused, very motivated. Some people call it, it's like finding your vocation. It's your raison d'etre in French, the whole reason why you are here. Important thing to know is purpose is not something you create. Purpose is something you discover. Every person already has a purpose inbuilt. It just has to be discovered. And it's not that someone will tell you this is your purpose. No. Purpose is something I have to find by joining the dots in my life and seeing a pattern forming. And then you feel very driven. The result is focus, a focused mind. And success respects focus more than it respects intelligence. There are many intelligent people in the world, not successful because they're not focused. And there are other people who are maybe less intelligent, but because they're focused, they're able to reach their goals. So I would suggest again, if purpose is something which is relevant in your life now, especially in the mornings, when you wake up, maybe get up a little earlier, spend some time in meditation, have a pen and have a little journal with you. Just ask yourself some deep questions and see what comes out from your subconscious. Questions such as, who am I? What's important to me? Why am I doing what I am doing? At the end of the day, what really matters? How would I define success? When my time is over in this life, under what category and with what criteria would I say I lived a meaningful life? Exploring these kinds of questions, which takes you to the very DNA of your soul, and just see the answers which come from your subconscious, especially in the morning time. And then just be open to clues and signs and signals from the day. Someone will tell you something and it'll just resonate with you. Or there'll be an email and it's like, wow, this is exactly what I was thinking. Or sometimes you even see, something written somewhere in the street and you think, gosh, that's exactly what I needed to listen to. I believe that when you really ask the question from an authentic place within you, then life, the universe, or the drama begins to respond to you. And you can either live your life on purpose or by accident. When you're living on purpose, everything is so meaningful in every aspect of your life.
Thank you, Yogesh Bhai. There is one question related to our diet. Are we required to start eating vegetarian, or should we stop watching movies if we are trying to pursue spiritual journey? Is there any role of these elements? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's important to be aware that whatever you eat, whatever you watch, whatever you read, whatever you listen to, everything has some impact upon your consciousness, that's for sure. And so I have to filter what I choose myself to be exposed to. So certainly with food, as you may know, people who are genuinely want to be on a spiritual path, they do refrain from eating meat. And there's a whole big theory behind that. But in essence, why to put violent energy into my body? An animal which has been killed with violence, of course, it's experienced so much fear and terror. So I'm putting that violent energy into my body, and that violent energy is also going to affect my mind. So it's better to avoid that if I want to overcome things like anger, violence, revenge, these kinds of energies. And also with what you watch, whether it's movies or even what you listen to or what you read, all of these things are going into my mind. So I need to take care and be selective in what I choose to watch. And it's not just about movies, but even the news. Of course, we all need to know what's going on, and we all need to understand the context of life. But some people are watching hours and hours and hours of talk shows where people are arguing and just putting across their own points of view. There comes a time when you have to say it's enough. I need to know what's going on, but that's enough. Why to keep, filling my mind with unnecessary ideas, which is just going to rob me of my peace? So yeah, some precautions need to be taken if I want my mind to stay peaceful and free from waste negative influences.
Thank you. There is another clarification required. Meditation, is it a kind of mental attachment with supreme power?
Sorry, could you repeat that? I didn't quite hear.
Meditation, is it a kind of mental attachment with the supreme being, supreme power? Can you call it that? What
Well,
exactly is meditation? Yeah, sorry.
yeah, I mean, if you look at the actual word meditation, it comes from the Latin word medere, and medere means to heal. So actually, meditation is a healing process by which the soul becomes free from the illness of ego, or the illness of anger, or the illness of greed, and so on. So I would say that yoga actually is the mental attachment, the mental link with the Supreme Soul. So I separate these two. Many people meditate, which is to feel peaceful, to feel relaxed, but few people go further and they develop a yoga with God. So, and I say yoga is that mental attachment with the Supreme Being.
Thank you. Bhaiji, you have shared the pyramid figure, which has a physical, social, emotional, and spiritual thing in line. So the question
Yeah.
is, the pyramid figure that you showed has spiritual stage in the bottom. Does that mean we are all born with the kind of knowledge already within us, or does it mean that we start with spiritual knowledge and then we move upward? How does it function? Are we born with spirituality or a sense of spiritualness inside of us, or we pursue it?
I mean, I would say like this, that you are the spirit. Even we have to look at this question. It's not that I am born with spirituality. I am the spirit. I, the soul. When the body is physically born, but you are not the body. You are the soul who enters that body. And I believe that whenever any soul first comes into this world, and this, of course, is going into another topic, each soul has innate spiritual wisdom within it. We know how to behave, we know how to interact. But over time, the soul loses touch with that. And this, of course, is known as the law of entropy, which tells us basically things go from new to old, things go from order to disorder. And it's only when you reach a certain state of disorder that you begin to look for order once again. So if you look at a person who's born today, I would say it's not necessary that that soul has just entered into the big theater of life. It could be that soul has already been around for some time. So there's two things. There are new entries into this world drama, and there are souls that have been around already and have just taken rebirths. But certainly at some point, I believe every soul begins to look for truth, begins to look for who am I, what am I doing here, what's really important. And the truth is already inside us, but it becomes covered up due to the way we live today and the experiences which we pass through. And hence, for me, the spiritual journey is really a return journey. Return back to peace, back to truth, back to happiness.
Thank you, Bhaiji. There is just one more question which I would like to ask is there any difference
Awesome.
between love and attachment? Is there any difference between love and attachment?
Yeah, now we need another 3 hours for this one.
Okay, so this is
It's
an
a big
in-depth
question.
question.
But no,
Yeah,
I can come to that, and maybe we
okay.
finish with this one if that's okay. There's a
Yes.
huge difference. Even there's a difference between love and love, in the sense that love can be an emotion, or love can be a feeling. In fact, I was talking yesterday. I did a talk somewhere about this. I've still got the paper with me, so it helps me to explain. See, two things have to be balanced. Love must be balanced with detachment. These two things go together. Any two qualities must go together. Love and detachment go together. But what happens for most people today is they put too much emphasis on the love part. And initially it starts off as some kind of emotional high, and a person is like on cloud number 9. But then after a while, that changes into possession. You try to possess another person. You try to control that person. If that doesn't work, you make some demands of how you want somebody to behave. And then you put pressure on someone to, behave as you want them to. And so on. This creates dependencies and expectations and jealousies. All of these things form. So it's like that love becomes corrupted because there is no detachment in it. I think this happens, quite often in people's relationships. Is what started off as what you may call as love has become possessiveness, control, attachment, dependency, etc. So to keep the love clean and pure, it must contain detachment. I'll explain in a minute. Some people go too far the other way. They become so detached that they end up being cold, distant, a little bit formal, aloof, and come across as being uncaring. The right place to be, and this is also an aspect of emotional intelligence, is to be balanced in being detached and loving. And that's what I think is like real or pure love. And I like to show my hands to explain this whole idea. It's like there has to be a healthy spiritual distance between any two people. And this could even be, with mother and child, or brother and sister, husband and wife, any two people. Now, in some parts of the world, like in some northern European countries, people tend to be quite far from each other, emotionally quite distant. And maybe that's not so good. In this part of the world, in the Mediterranean where I live and some other places, people tend to be rather like this, very intertwined with each other. So I think this is not so good, but also this is not so good. I believe the right way is to be like this. Because if you're stuck to someone emotionally, If that person has a bad day or goes a bit crazy, it will affect you so much as well. If you're like this, and somebody else has a bad day, goes a bit crazy, you are still stable. Your stability will help the other one to stabilize. That's called being detached and loving. And where you're detached and loving, then this unhealthy thing called attachment does not form. When you're detached and loving, you feel free and you allow the other to be who they are as well. The result of that, there is a flow of respect and happiness and love between the parties involved. Where there is attachment, there will ultimately be emotional games being played, there'll be tiredness, and there'll be the exchange of some kind of sorrow between the involved parties.
Thank you very
Okay.
much,
Thanks to you.
Yogesh Bhai.
Thank you.
Before we sign out from today's session, there are just two more things. In case if you want to know, in case you want to re-watch the recording of the today's session, you can visit bkitving.org/webinar, and in 2 to 3 days it will get uploaded, so you can have it again. Another thing is, thank you very much for today's session, and we request you all to please send your kind feedback so that we can transform to better suit our audience. And there are lots and lots of thank yous for you, Yogesh Bhaiji. It was structured in a beautiful manner. This is what everybody is saying. So thank you very much for taking out your time. And thank you everyone for coming and making this a huge success.
Thank you. Keep well. All the best. Take care, everyone. Okay.
Okay, Om Shanti.